Today's episode is brought to you by 5 and 7 Tactical Solutions LLC. They are the premier team for tactical training and protection. You know, family, if you're looking for the best in firearm safety and education, I highly recommend going to 5 and 7 Tactical Solutions LLC.com. They have a wide range of clients from military to law enforcement, security, and civilians. They give civilians the opportunity to get trained by professionals that have decades of experience. You know, family, when I was in Honolulu, one of my courses I took was the pistol safety course. And I highly recommend that for anybody that is seriously considering protecting your family or your property. And also, they'll teach you best practices in the state that you're in. If you are in Hawaii or Arizona, they do have a license to carry course. For those that are not comfortable with firearms, they also have home defense courses as well, like home defense combative courses. If you are a school teacher or you have a church and you want to learn some basic first aid courses to help stop the bleeding, they have courses like that as well. Also, they have non-lethal certifications as well. If you go to 5 and 7 Tactical Solutions LLC.com, be sure at the contact form to mention GLO, and they will give you $25 off of any training package or protection package. 5 and 7 Tactical Solutions LLC.com, the premier team for tactical training and protection. Aloha family, want to announce our new merch is up. If you go to therealgilo.com, click on merchandise, it'll take you to our storefront. A very special limited run of our Vision t-shirts are up. Very special colors from Holy Land Light Olive, Sweet Banana Cream, Pure White, Sahara Desert Cream, and our final color of this offering is Sweet Baby Blue. Go to therealgilo.com, click on merchandise, check out what we have. We also have pickleball paddles in multiple colors. We have stickers. Also, our N Hakora branding, we have that as well. Beanies, coffee mugs, all of those things are in our storefront. Be sure to go to therealgilo.com, click on merchandise. And once again, family, thank you so much for your support. As we say in Hawaii, mahalo nui loa. I'm very excited to announce today's guest. I've known him for a few years now. I think I met him back in 2015. Some of you may know him from his reality TV show that he used to have. If you are in the Philippines or even in Alaska, you may have seen him, or maybe he was the guy that had that crazy long beard. For those of you on social media, you may know him as PapaBear Alaska. Man, he's done some crazy live streams out there in the North Pole, even with Santa Claus. There's actually a resident Santa Claus in the North Pole where he lives. PapaBear Alaska has been known to do some pretty intense live streams, even to the point where Twitter executives and Twitter management teams had invited him down to their headquarters in San Francisco so they can meet him. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm excited to have my next guest by the name of PapaBear Alaska. We hope you enjoy this episode.
Woke up every day like this. It's a brand new day. Hey. Wake up every morning and say it's a brand new day. Hey. Take a good day, make it great, okay? 'Cause if you got some lemons, make some lemonade. Yeah, chase those clouds away. It's a brand new day. Hey. It's a brand new day. It's a brand new day. Okay.
Bro, I've been doing this so long, I'm still nervous. What the heck, bro?
We're good.
Yeah,
Greg,
yeah.
what's up?
Did you know that you're my first podcast guest? Like, I don't know if you know that. Yeah.
When was that?
Last year, I think.
Year
Last
ago?
year. Yeah. Man, it's good to have. Hey, we got our family on Twitch. We got Sarah out there saying aloha, and we got
Cool.
Tala. Tala's out.
everybody.
Tala's on Twitter saying hello. What's up, Tala?
Oh, wow. Cool.
The world's best beard.
Twitter, you get in trouble if you don't call it X now, right?
Yeah, I see Twitter X.
It's hard to make the switch.
I gotta ask, so what is your time? Is it 1 hour? 1 hour back, right? From
Yeah. So I'm 1 hour behind you on the West Coast. So, and then we're 1 hour ahead of Hawaii, which is weird. So we're between you and Hawaii.
And it changes. You guys change in between. It's weird, right?
Yeah. That's pretty crazy. And then, it's hard to understand all the time zones. Sometimes I get a map of the globe and I try to figure it out, but it's some pretty weird stuff. And then if you have daylight savings time, which is whoever started that, I'd love to wake them up from their grave and slap them. It just makes people late to everything because they got to reset their clocks every year. I think we're the only country that does that.
What, it's for farmers, right? Technically,
It's supposed to be for the Midwest. I mean, it doesn't affect Alaska at all. It just messes with us. So we got a crazy schedule anyway. And it doesn't affect anybody near what would it be, the equator, the center of the earth, because like when I go to the Philippines, 12 months out of the year, sun comes up around 6 a.m., sun goes down around 6 p.m. 12 months out of the year. So it's pretty steady. They're like, they only change up a few minutes every year, whereas we're radically changing. I don't know. I don't get it. So,
well, I gotta ask, because I know you guys get it all the time, but for me, I saw it for the first time, the Northern Lights, bro.
Yeah.
Did you guys see it too?
Yeah. And I didn't go out last night. I saw people talking about it, but we're a little spoiled up here. And the further you go north in Alaska, the better you see them. And the further you get away from the city, even though I live in city limits, I have trees surrounding, so I get a pretty good view from my yard. But if I want to get a really good view, we just hop in the truck. We drive 10 minutes out of town. We go up, maybe hike up to Moose Bluff. It's a little hill outside of town. I used to do a lot of periscopes from that bluff. And from up there, or we call it the spillway. There's this Army Corps of Engineers years ago built this big spillway to keep our city from flooding. And so during Northern Lights times, you'll see a few dozen vehicles parked up there with people sitting in their cars, drinking coffee out of their thermos and just watching the Northern Lights. And they venture out into the cold and take photos. But it's a pretty regular thing up here. I mean, it's not like, have you ever seen them? People ask me that. Have you ever seen the Northern Lights? And they're out more often than you know.
Well, that's what you get for being at the top of the planet. I mean, you get that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, so they're out a lot. And if it's a cloudy night, you're not going to see them. So that if it's cold and clear, you're going to see Northern Lights. Pretty sure you're going to do it.
Yeah, I got to acknowledge my family on Instagram because I haven't been live on Instagram for a while. But thank you to, I see Shirley, Todd, brother Nick, and also I think the other guy is Eddie as well. Thank you for those. But going back to Alaska, so for people that don't know, PapaBear did he did this live stream where he turned he turned his camera and went live, and I don't know if it was sunset to sunrise or sunrise to sunset. I forget which one it was.
Yeah. So in the winter time, you can do it in December. So basically the sun will come up, and when I say, in the wintertime when it comes up, it doesn't actually come up. You don't see the sun. It kind of just pops over the horizon. You might see it through the trees, but most of the time we can't see it in mid-December. And so maybe 11:30, and then it sets again at 1:30. So you have this very short, you can sit there and film sunrise and sunset in a matter of an hour and a half, 2 hours. You literally can, the whole thing. And then in the summertime, June, summer solstice around the 21st, just the opposite. So the sun never sets. And so you'll see it just do a big circle in the sky, and it barely dips behind the trees for a short time. And that's sunset, sunrise. It happens in minutes. So I'll film that, and that's kind of cool. My cousin's a clinical psychologist. I bet you she would have a good business up there, because I would mess with my mind all the time having this weird daylight hours, People think so, but it's amazing how quick you can adapt. If you're really structured, we get a lot of volunteers that come out to our summer camp. And so the going joke is they'll say, how many hours are we going to work you a day? And I said, I'll never work you past dark. And so it never gets dark all summer. So they find out when they get there. But they'll be laying in a tent or in the cabin, and they're just staring at the ceiling because it's 3 a.m. and the sun's still out. And so they're like, I can't sleep. And it energizes you. You just, when the sun's out like that, you just want to go do something. You want to go busy, do something. Your body doesn't want to shut down. So what people do up here, especially when they move up here, initially when they move and they're not used to it, they block out all the windows and so that you can kind of get yourself into a sleep habit. You block out the windows, block out the sunlight, but just know that if you open the shades or pull the foil off of the window at 2 a.m, it's going to be bright as day.
I used to work midnight shift. That was a trick, cover up all the windows, but the body still wants to. I don't know. It's weird. If the sun's out, the body wants to be up. That's how I felt anyway. So even if you try to hide it, there's something weird about the body clock. It's not just the light. It's matter of fact, the what do they call it? The aurora borealis. I think that's what they call it.
Yeah,
this last one.
Northern Lights, same thing. Yeah.
It literally affected my GPS. I was in Portland.
Really?
Yeah, I was in Portland the other day, and my GPS kept going all funky. Like, it was strange. I've never seen it. And then I didn't realize, that's what they said, that it may affect your magnetic devices and stuff.
Wow.
Well, it was a solar storm, right? It was a solar storm or something as well.
Yeah. You can literally study that as a degree up here in Fairbanks at the university. I'm not sure how that's going to end up helping you in a job in the future, but what do? I study the Northern Lights and what causes them and the effect and everything. But the subject of light and darkness is one that people talk to me about a lot, and especially when I'm out promoting the work that we do with suicide prevention. One of the first questions people ask me when we do Q&As, no matter where I'm at, is they say, is it because it's so dark in the winter that suicide is high? And I say no, because if you're depressed, you can be depressed on a sunny day. Yeah. Does it add to it if you're already depressed? Probably. But what's interesting, the bulk of our suicides don't happen in the dead darkness of winter. It actually happens in April and March. Well, March, April, mostly April and May. It happens right about now, because what happens is people been locked in and they see everything turning green like it is right now around here, but it's still crazy cold and it can still drop and hit 0 degrees. And so I don't know. They say that has something to do with it. But so I don't believe it's the light or the darkness. I believe it's something more internal. I've been here since 98, and the darkness has never depressed me. I embrace it and have fun with it. We go out and take walks when it's dark, and you bundle up and you put on all your gear, and I put on my fox hat that's in my profile picture. That's a big old fox hat, and that thing is crazy warm. Or you wear a beaver hat or something, and you bundle up and you go walk in the snow and look at the lights and enjoy things. And especially in this little town where Christmas is, this is called the Christmas town. We have our oldest business in town is Santa Claus House, and people come from all over the world to visit that one business in our town, Santa Claus House.
Hey, we got to pause for a second. Joanne Pham is in our Twitter conversation, and so she says, "Aloha! So excited to catch you live. It's good to see you, Joanne." She says,
wow.
"Hi, PBA," which is you. And then Mike out on YouTube has been trolling me. He's been saying that my hair is longer than your beard. So, well, to reply to that, yeah. So I will never be able to compete with PapaBear in the beard department. So I'm going to compete with him on the hair and the long hair.
Okay,
so.
You could whoop me there. That's for sure. I'm about a half an inch long here.
So you were talking about the suicide prevention, right? So I know we talked about it before, but can you kind of give us an update and maybe not just status report, but maybe praise report on what happened in the last camp since we last talked?
Wow. So I just got back a few weeks ago from 2 months in the Philippines, and this was my fifth trip to the Philippines. And most of the time I stay, I don't know, 6 weeks to 2 months. The 2 months is kind of the maximum I can stay with the visa over there without jumping through some hurdles. So what I've been doing the last couple years is they've had me really involved in government schools. So they're inviting me. When I say they, I'm literally getting invited by schools and by officials and by local pastors as well. And they're getting me hooked up with universities, colleges, and high schools mostly. And so, and these are a variety of different schools. Some of them are in the cities of the islands that I'm focusing on, and some are in provinces, and others are in what they call barangays. A barangay would be what we here in Alaska call a village. So it'd be a small remote community. A lot of these small remote communities don't even have a police department. And so they're much smaller, kind of self-contained. But if they have a school, I've been getting invited into these. So a variety of schools, and they vary in sizes. I think the smallest group I've spoke to in a school is 100 people, and the largest was well over 4,000. They're typically in the over 1,000 students at a time, 2,000, 3,000 like that I'm speaking to. And they give me several hours in these government schools to do my suicide prevention program, and then also to minister to them. And they're open to that. And the Philippine government kind of has an edge on our government when it comes to that. And probably because of its Catholic background, they actually put in their government constitution that the schools must have kind of a spirituality day. They have to open up, they being school administrators, principals, have to open up the school for these days of imparting something spiritual into the young people. And from what I'm hearing is it hasn't happened in a long, long time. So when they found out I do suicide prevention a couple of years ago, they go, wow, that's a reason to get you back into the school. So I've now spoken dozens of schools, literally thousands and thousands of young people, and we're seeing amazing results. And it's really awesome to see them. And you're talking 2 to 3 hour program that I'm doing. And so I'm covering all of the what is suicide, what causes it, what are the things, and then I work my way into the meat of the whole program is imparting to them what their value is. Because if you know what your value is, you don't want to devalue yourself by ending your life. And so we talk to them about value, and then I go from there and I literally bring the correlation of here's how we know what our value is, and it's all directly connected to the work of the cross and the value of the work of the cross. And then I literally lead them into a relationship with the Lord. And it's really awesome to see them do that. And they're really hungry for something that's real. So that's really cool. And because of their background culture, the Catholic is really the religion of the nation, has been for years, since they were taken over by the Spaniards a long time ago. And because of that, it's not a huge leap to go from Mary to Jesus. It's really not.
We talked about that the other day, right? And it's not it. So for anybody that doesn't know, Papa Bear's the bulk of his ministry before the Philippines was in these remote villages, right? And
yeah, and we're still doing that.
Still doing that now.
Yeah,
we're talking about suicide prevention. I don't know if we talked about it, but what are the ages of these kids that we're talking about suicide prevention? Like, what are the age ranges?
Yeah, so the ones I'm going after are here in Alaska. We kind of hit all ages as far as the young people. So we even have camps for like middle school. That's our big camp. So middle school would be like ages or grade 6 on up, but we also have an elementary camp, and then we do high school ministry. We try to get them in that junior high, that middle school realm, because if you catch them there, you have a better chance of diverting them. By the time they get into high school, especially kids in remote communities, they've already established some either good or bad habits. And it's really hard to pull them out of, if they found a good income selling meth it's a little harder to pull them out of that. You got to it's going to take some time. It's not a one-time event. They don't just show up to a youth event and then things turn around. Usually there's a little more relational involvement. Getting the young people involved is so important. You know, here in Alaska, unfortunately, we still have the highest rate of suicide per capita among 18 years of age and younger per capita in the world. And so you can go to any region on the planet and find a bad area of suicide, and Alaska still per capita has the worst numbers, even though we're a smaller populated state. And some people think we're a country, but we're a state. And so when I went to the Philippines a few years ago, I didn't know that I was establishing our ministry. I knew I was in the heart of the country, but I didn't know that the city, literally the city that we were establishing our work, has the highest rate of suicide in all of the Philippines, which is over 7,600, islands, over 2,000 populated islands, and we're in this island called Panay Island, and it's right in the middle of the country, and this city happens to have the highest rate of suicide. And so when I found that out, I knew I was in the right place at the right time, and we've seen amazing results over there.
Why? I mean, I got emotional for a second, then I turned off the faucet, but we're talking about kids.
Yeah.
That's crazy. And I don't know if anybody even knows. We're talking about kids.
Yeah. My wife still lives in Iloilo, Philippines. She called me yesterday on video, and she goes, there was another suicide. And in Iloilo, and it was a student who got his grades, high school student. He got his grades, and he got a C, a D, and a C plus. Anyway, they weren't the grades he wanted. And his obviously his parents were not happy with him, and he literally wrote a note saying that he couldn't get good grades, so there was no reason to live, and he killed himself over the pressure of scholastics. Yeah, and just
so how are they killing themselves? Like, how are these kids killing themselves?
It's a little different where in America we have a little more access to different weapons, so it's not uncommon for somebody to borrow a pistol or something. But really common here in Alaska is hanging. You'll find somebody hung in the barn, the fish drying shed, or in the closet or whatever. Over there, it's more hanging and using knives, because that's pretty common. And so, you can't take away the device, because when people want to find a way to kill themselves, they'll do it. There's pills, and there's so many things, and there's so many bridges that you can jump off of that are fatal. And so there's a few bridges over there that have been kind of nicknamed as like death bridges, because they're just going from one town to the next, but people go there to jump. And crazy. I was just reading recently about Golden Gate Bridge. Have you ever driven on the Golden Gate Bridge going to San Francisco?
One time. Yeah,
it's crazy. Well, I used to live over there, and so they've had, I think it's 2,000 suicides off of the bridge over the few years, and I think it was in 20. Somebody can correct me on this. It was like 2015 or 2016. They finally put nets up to catch people, and it discouraged people from jumping because they get caught in the net, and it doesn't work. They also put phones and like kind of these distress phones on the bridge, that if you're out there, you grab them and call somebody, and so they did as much as they could to try to stop it. And what's crazy, I was reading this article about this guy this is before they got the nets up, which would have been in the early 2000s. And he walked from his apartment in San Francisco, walked out to the apex, which is the highest point of the bridge. That's where you go. The bridge is arched. and he jumped. And of course, they found his body later. He was successful in ending his life. Well, they went and investigated his apartment, and they found a handwritten suicide note. And he said, "I'm walking to the bridge, and if just one person will smile at me, I won't jump." This is San Francisco, where you got millions of people in a city. You can't walk one block without seeing somebody. I've been there probably 100 times. I've been there so many times. And so this is San Francisco. You have to walk around people. It's hard to walk to that bridge without bumping into people. And you got to go through that part of town is like the tourism part of town. So it's not just locals. You're going to run into thousands of people who are just passing through. And he's saying, if just one person smiled at me, I won't jump.
Did you see that video of a pastor that was preaching? And there was a guy in a crowd swearing like profanities. And it wasn't profanities against the pastor or the message. That was just his maturity level. So the pastor had addressed it. He said, "Hey, Anthony was the guy that brought this guy to the church." He said, "Hey, can you help me control, the language?" And well, this whole conversation ensued. Long story short, they brought the guy up who had brought this guy off the street, was the guy off the street. And basically what happened was he went to an earlier service. He took notes. He went out and found some homeless people, fed them, and then he brought them to church. So the guy wanted to come to church. Well, the homeless guy in the middle of the service was swearing like, F this or and not to disrespect but that was just his maturity level. Like it was like to confirm, right? And so anyways, they brought them both on stage. And the homeless guy said, if he had not picked me up today, I was about to jump in the middle of the freeway.
Wow.
And all it took was for this guy to say, I want to go find somebody to go give them a sandwich or get them some food. And he brought him to the church. And this is what, I don't care who you are when you watch this video, the pastor grabbed the guy and gave him a hug. And he asked the guy, when's the last time you got a hug? And the guy said, it's been a very long time. And I was like, wow, this is real. And this is the first time I'm going to share this publicly. But my mom, before she met my dad, I don't know who found her. I want to say it's I think my auntie and maybe her husband at the time. But my mom had slit her wrist. I don't know all the details. I just know that, and so they had to rush her to the hospital. And so, and this is a long time ago, right? And this is the first time I'm sharing this, by the way. And I'm not speaking ill of anybody in my family, my mom. This is just a story that I think is going to lay out the foundation of what we're talking about. And so, of course, my mom survived, obviously, because I'm here. But through that moment, and then we were my brother was in high school in the 90s. And I remember getting picked up from school, and I don't remember all the details. I just remember my parents, hey, we got to go to the hospital. And my brother had attempted suicide. And this is the first time I'm sharing this, by the way. And
wow.
But I think it's appropriate. My wife and I were just praying yesterday, and I told her, I said, even though I've never had those issues or those desires to go that route, to go to that dark place of all the things we've been through, I said, I'm still going to declare, I'm going to cancel that accusation out of my bloodline, that whatever the enemy may say that this is who you are, no more. I said, God, I give that to you, even though it's not an issue, because it's going to stop with me, right? It's going to stop with me. It's going to stop here. My kids will not have that. My grandkids will not have that.
Right.
And these kids that you talked about, like, what is their family structure like? Is that, I know we talked about it before, but like, as a parent, I take full responsibility if my kids are in that position, Contrast between Philippines and Alaska, what is the difference, or what have you seen?
Most of it's similar. But as I'm encountering situations of young people who have attempted, both here in Alaska and in the Philippines, people have attempted suicide. Most of the time, their reasons are somewhat similar. Now, some of it's culturally, like for instance, if you've studied the Chinese community, you probably know a little bit about that.
A little
There's a
bit.
lot of suicides because of lack of achievement. And there's so much pressure put on by the parents to achieve and get the straight A's and the A pluses and to get the degrees. And the person who falls just slightly below that high bar often says, I'm a failure. I'm embarrassing to my family, and then they go and end their life. A little bit of that in the Philippines, not so much as in the Chinese culture, but there is a real push to get educated, do really well, and get whatever grants you need, and get whatever scholarships you need, and get whatever, and become that nurse or become that person, and make money for the family, because it's definitely a third world country when it comes to the bulk of the people, economically. And what's interesting is you go into remote Alaska, where it's mostly native communities. It's not third world. When I first started going, it kind of feels like it is, because most of the villages had no indoor plumbing, and some of the houses didn't even have electricity. And so now it's pretty common for them to have, the government's gone in and to most of these communities over the last couple decades and has upgraded. There's still some villages that are pretty rustic though, but many of them now have internet. The village might have a tower that goes up and it's a satellite. At the very least, the school will have internet. And so it's pretty common to see kids sitting outside the school after school with their device and connecting to the Wi-Fi.
No indoor plumbing, but thank God we have Wi-Fi.
They do. Yeah. And it's crazy going into a remote like a native village, and you'll see that there's only 2 or 3 cars maybe in this village, because they have to ship them in. People don't really own cars. You'll see a snow machine that's broken down in the yard, and they'll have some 4-wheelers, might have a motorcycle, um, and they'll have a little log home, very small home, and they might have an outhouse with no indoor plumbing, but they got a big screen TV, and they have an iPhone, because there's a tower that was put in recently, and they're connected to the outside world. But when it comes to people ending their life, it goes back to what I talked about earlier. It goes back to the self-value. If you don't have value, you don't take care of yourself. If you don't believe you're valuable, then you don't treat yourself as a valuable thing. And so the things that are valuable to us, we protect. The things that are valuable, the things that are really valuable, we lock in a safe, right? Yeah. The things that our government sees as value, or an organization, or you'll see things of value locked behind glass and by security and by laser and everything else, right? That if you go look at an amazing painting or something, it's usually has a lot of security involved, because we protect the things that are valuable to us. We protect those things, and nobody takes the most valuable jewel that you have or gem and just leave it in the backyard. It's going to be somewhere in a protected place in your home, and you protect it. But when you have people who grew up and value was never instilled into them, they were treated as if they had no value, or maybe they had a parent or a guardian or a relative or a sibling that always told them that they were an accident and they were a waste and they were stupid. And they started hearing these labels that formed who they thought they were at a young age. And then they start living out these labels. I'm stupid. I'm ugly, or I can't achieve anything. And it affects a person all the way into their adulthood. Many people hide it for many years, and then they get in their 30s and their 40s and their 50s, and then they realize that, this is all a waste, because this is who I am, and they've already devalued themselves.
Imagine that video. I think we talked about last time in India, where they have these orphanages, but they're not even real orphanages. They're homeless children in the dumps, in the city dumps.
Mm-hmm.
So they have no, I guess because of India, they have the caste system. And so these children, they're just dumping them off in these piles of trash where there's communities of children, and they're all orphans. And the reason is a lot of them have AIDS. So no one wants to take care of them because they're a risk or whatever. And I think it was Ashley Judd. She went and did a mission there, and she ministered to the kids. They did medical missions. And then she came back and said that it's not the fact that they're, homeless or they have no value. That doesn't break her heart, because she said that if they don't value or treasure like who they are, because they have no value in their system, to them, what's the point of brushing my teeth? What's the point of wiping myself after I use the bathroom? What's the point of taking a bath? But she said all of that didn't break her heart. And what broke her heart is that there was no one there to love these kids. They didn't know what true love is. And I said, wow.
Yeah. And that's what, when you exemplify authentic love to an individual, especially a young person, often they're seeing that now for the first time in their life. And it may take a while, but it eventually sticks. And they're like, wow, this is something I've never felt this before. Whatever it is, I like it. And it's something that they begin to trust and they begin to cherish. And at that point, then you can start loving them into a place where they recognize their value.
So what is I know you guys have a camp coming up, and are you going to do both Alaska and Philippines same time?
Now we're just kind of finding when our slow time is in Alaska, and that's when I book my Philippine stuff. So I'm getting ready to go back and do some more schools probably this fall, and then I'll go again probably mid-January and do a lot more colleges and universities again. But so in between time is when we're doing our camps. We're all done with our winter ministry here in Alaska, and now we're gearing up for our summer camp Nashi. They say Nashi. It's a Gwich'in Athabascan word, so and it means a place of healing. So this will be the 16th year we've run that camp, and we're pretty excited. In fact, I was out shopping for supplies and tools today, and picking up some brand new chainsaws, I think I told you about, for our camp. And without chainsaws, we really can't expand our camp. And so it's a real benefit to have some good working saws out there. But yeah, we'll do camps for the local Native kids. There's about 8 Gwich'in Athabascan villages in that region. And you're talking about a region that's like the size of Texas. So it's not small. I mean, it's pretty big and spread out. But most of these people are going to be boating in. Some of them are flying in from a remote village and then boating from another village. It takes them a while to get in. And so transportation is our big hurdle to get them to camp. So we have 40 acres that our ministry owns, and it's up on the upper Yukon River, just a quarter mile off the Yukon River. If you've ever studied the Yukon River, it's pretty massive and crazy. So we have this amazing camp. I sent you an aerial photo. I don't know if you saw that, so people can actually look at that. I think I emailed you that.
I want to play that promo video I made the other day. The one, it's a short clip.
You go.
Yeah, there so let's play it for the people that are in our live.
So I remember this one summer, and we had this team that had to fly out into a local village. We came out of the tent that morning, though, and it was just crazy wind. I mean, a really bad storm. And as soon as we left our river here and busted into the main channel, the wind just was radical. It was crazy. I'm talking 3-4 foot white caps. I mean, it feels like you're on the ocean. You're just hit one wave and you jump in the air to the next wave in a 24-foot boat. I was actually concerned about the structure of the boat. We had so much gear, so loaded down, so many people. As you're coming off of those waves, you can hear the hull of the boat just slamming against the waves. On top of that, we get out into the big water, we call it. When you're crossing from one cut bank to the next, you have to cross into the big water, and there was just no safe place to run on the edge. So we got out in the big waves, and suddenly the motor just up and died on us. At this point, I was really concerned. We have big waves. We're floating into a cut bank. We have a fully loaded boat. You do not want to get a boat loose without steering or power capability into a cut bank. It'll just take you down, it'll take you under, and you're done. And here's what's funny about that trip. It wasn't the first time, and it probably won't be the last, because that's the Yukon River, that's interior Alaska, and that's missions in Alaska.
That was just a tidbit of the show, because I watched it on YouTube. That's legit hardships, bro.
It's crazy. Yeah, every year there's like those moments where I just go, okay, Lord, this might be my moment, because you hit some dangerous situations, and you do as best you can to try to make sure boats are in good operating equipment, everything, the equipment's in good condition and all your safety gear's intact, and you've done all of the backup plans you possibly can, and then nature just comes at you and drops some crazy storm, and I've been thrown out of a boat before because of like horrendous winds hitting us, and by a miracle am still here to talk about it. Because when you go in the Yukon River, most of the time they're doing a funeral for you, and they spend a few weeks looking for your body. That's what happens.
So this is all just to get to that spot.
Yeah, 150 river miles just to get to our camp. Now, our students, we pick them up in remote villages that are near our camp. So some of them are only going 30 miles on the river one way, and then others are going 60 miles to our the main hub village that we use. And then there are some kids we pick up on a mountain village way up in the mountains. We have to use our jet boat, and that's 90 miles one way. So we go 90 miles up, 90 miles down. It's an all-day affair, and it wears you out because it's a really skinny, shallow, fast-moving water. And like in every turn, you're like, "Ooh, we almost died. Ooh, we almost died." And you're like, and then you get to camp and you're like, "Oh, thank God we all survived." And the kids they kind of grew up living on the river like that. And this isn't funny, but this is a reality. Most of them have a story to tell. Even the young kids are like, "Oh yeah, my uncle died on this river," or "I used to have a sister, but she fell off the boat and we never found her," that kind of thing. So most of them have a story. If you sit down with the aunties and the grandmas, they have story after story of people, siblings, children, different people being lost on the Yukon. It's definitely a river you don't want to toy with. You don't swim on the Yukon. I'm just telling you. I don't care how good you are. So what you do is you find a side channel, and that's if we're going to get in the water, we use a side channel.
Now, how many boats do you guys have to take supplies?
Right now we have 2. We still have that same boat that you just saw in the video clip. I've been running that big 24-foot all-weld for years. And
that's not a boat, by the way. That's a piece of metal that water can get in and sink it. It's not a boat.
That had a Honda 150, and we literally wore that motor out. I mean, we ran it about 300 hours past its throwaway date, where they say trash it. And I ended up tuning the motor up and sold it to an old fisherman who was happy with it. And then we replaced it with a Yamaha 225. So it's got a beast on the back now.
Now, do you remember? I don't know if remember you talked about getting a runway. I think that was.
Yeah, we have a runway at camp.
Okay,
we have 1,000-foot runway. We've had, oh my goodness, a lot of flights coming in there. Like, well over 100 flights. In fact, we're probably past the 200 mark of flights now, going in and out of there. Yeah.
what about the aircraft? I remember we were talking about you guys getting an aircraft.
These are all bush planes that are coming in there. So they're typically small Cessnas or Pipers. And they're, when I say bush planes, they usually have Tundra tires. So if you Google Tundra tire or bush plane, you'll see what I'm talking about. And they're typically a tail dragger. So they'll have two big giant tires up front and this little dragging tire off of the back, the tail, which is called a tail dragger. Those are really popular for going into very short runways. They don't need a lot of space. And so 1,000 feet is plenty enough for them. As long as they have a good approach, they can come in with a load and go out with a load. Then you get into trikes. So that's the other category of airplane. So a trike would be when you get your pilot's license, you're going to start on a trike, whether it's usually like a Cessna 150, right? And so a trike is going to be 3 tires that are in a triangle like that, and they're typically the same size, and they're usually street tires. Now some people put a little bit larger tire so they can get into the bush if they have a trike. Like a 207 is a 206, a 207. That's going to be a trike.
You have your pilot's license?
No. I've flown a few planes, but I don't have a license. I don't know. I just never got around to doing it. I probably should. Then I'd be tempted to get a plane, but it's definitely needed here in Alaska because I think it's only, my goodness, there's so many communities that have no road system, so if you have an airplane, you get a lot more places. If you have a boat, summertime opens up a lot more travel and activity for you. But if you have an airplane, you can travel year round because you can put skis on it and land on the snow. You can put floats on it if you have that configuration and land on a lake, or you can put wheels and land on pavement, or you can land on grass. We have a grass runway.
Where we live, I feel like I need to get a pilot's license because we're so isolated. Not isolated, but we're blessed. Yeah. We're blessed. But it's funny because we were shopping. So for point of reference, people that don't know, we live in a beautiful country town, and we got 10,000 people maybe. So anytime we see a Polynesian, first question is, what are you doing? What are you doing out here? And so anyways, my wife, she saw this guy, and we're looking at him, and we just know that he's not from, we know he's not from Oregon. And well, we started talking to him, and nice guy. And I'll say his name out. I'll put his name out there in case anybody wants to learn how to fly. He's a pilot, former military, and he's a flight instructor. And so he teaches people how to fly, and of all places, he's from the same island that we're from. And
wow.
So anyways, we were talking, and I'm like, how much does it cost to, so it varies, right? So if you want to do it for personal or commercial, the price varies.
Yeah.
I think around 12 to 15,000 is a good starting point to get. So my wife and was like, you should go get some flight lessons. So I literally thought about it, and I'm just thinking about it just because there's an airport literally right up the hill from us, and it'd be so cool to have an airplane and say, hey, let's go to Seattle. Can't go to Hawaii because that's too far, but but there's a lot of that when we drive up. There's a lot of people that have those planes, but I remember we were praying about getting you guys getting your own plane, but now that's not a necessity right now for you guys.
Not yet. I mean, we definitely have a runway right now. We're really praying for another runway here locally in the North Pole area, but that's the goal, so we can have that connected and get around a lot quicker and easier and cheaper.
I remember the ballpark was what, $2 million or something.
Yeah, absolutely. We're still chasing that, and we'll see what happens. But it's a great opportunity, but that really makes a difference. Alaska is one of those unique places, much like if you did missions in a remote country where you need an airstrip and an airplane because the logistics of getting things to that location are difficult. Well, couldn't be more remote than we are in Alaska. And so, that makes a big difference. So you need to come up here and hop in a plane and land on our runway.
Okay. So First of all, I don't get in planes with a 5-point harness. So if it's got shoulder straps that connect to the waist and you got the waist strap, I don't know. Because that means the plane does
some
this.
of them, I don't know. I don't know. Some of these are pretty small planes. I've flown in planes that I swear I'll never get back in, just because I'm not a small guy, and some of these planes have a little sardine cockpit in them. But they get around, and they're a huge blessing in Alaska.
Well, I tell you what. Now that we're live, and my wife might be listening, we talked about this off camera, but potentially a weekend might be doable. So
Okay.
Philippines would be cool,
Would
but
be cool.
I do have my passport, but I think stay domestic would be probably better. But
Yeah. You don't need a passport to come to Alaska.
yeah, I don't need one for there.
No, you don't. It helps if you're driving through Canada, but you're talking about a week's drive, so you don't want to do that. So you could fly up here in one day, So that really makes a difference. But yeah, you got to get up here and check it out, and imagine the videos you'd go home with.
Well, I know my life would be changed. Like, just even what we do, just in terms of, or what we've done before too, with just the whole, the ministry, the pastoral side, and even the breakthrough in our family, and to be able to do that for the kids, bro, that'd be pretty insane.
Yeah.
And you know what? They might think I'm you pick. They really. Hey.
They might. There's a connection there, and for people that don't know, when we talk about Native people in Alaska, we're talking about 230 federally recognized tribes. So that's how many native languages are just in the state of Alaska. So our camp happens to be in the middle, kind of in the heart of the Athabascan people. So Athabascan is a nation of people. So there's a lot of Athabascan tribes in the lower 48. For instance, if you've ever met a Navajo Indian, they're actually from the Athabascan tribe. So their language is going to be very similar. And so Apache Indian, Comanche Indian, they're all part of the Athabascan tribe. There's several others. So it's a nation of Indians. And in Alaska, we have 12 Athabascan languages. So you can go upriver and they talk a different language. And then the same day you boat downriver and stop at another village and they have a slightly different language. And you keep going downriver and hit the next village and they have a different language. It's pretty crazy. So we happen to be in an area where it's Gwich'in Athabascan, which that tribe goes all the way into Canada, up the Yukon and up the different rivers that feed from Canada into Alaska. And you find that's where their relatives and their bloodline goes that direction. As you go down the river, you get away from the Gwich'in people and you get into like the Tanana and the upper Tanana, the different languages. And so we're mostly ministering to Athabascan natives, but we have a lot of, there's a few Eskimos that live in that part of the region that have intermarried and moved over. And so a lot of mix happens a lot.
How many years now you've been there?
Since 98.
Wow. That's 25, 26 years.
Yeah, it's
26.
been a while. Yeah, quarter of a century.
Yeah. I've been with Emily for 25. Well, we'll be 25.
Yeah.
So I met her in 99. Wow, dude, that's a long time.
Is that crazy? Yeah.
And the reason why I asked that is because you say those names like you speak it fluently, So.
Well, I've just been to a lot of villages and I've learned a lot about the culture, and what you can't do is paint them all with the same brush. There's things that are similar in most of those cultures and that you can do that will resonate with them. For one is any protocol or event that has honor in it, whether that village honors their elders or not, it speaks to something from their past. So anytime you honor people, especially elders or leaders, the chief of a village, that kind of thing, it goes a long way. So honoring is something that is usually found in all of those cultures. But as far as belief systems and language, they differ from village to village often.
Well, let's talk about that line. And because, so me being part Native Hawaiian, a lot of Hawaiian culture, they pull back, and I'm trying to find the right terminology, but it's honoring the traditions of our past.
Yeah.
But when we're talking about, like for me and my wife, we're talking about ministry. It's not so much about the Hawaiian kingdom, but it's about God's kingdom. What does his kingdom say about Hawaiian culture? Because there's a lot of things in our past, in our culture, that technically do not glorify God, but they glorify other things, like, you know, and I'll be as sensitive as possible, but this is my show, so I say whatever I like. But basically, we idolize ocean, we idolize fire, and those things, versus really there's one God, right? So when you have multiple cultures like yours, what you're dealing with, when it comes to your ministry and your camp, how do you deal with that line? How do you walk these kids through their cultural background, if they have anything? And like, I know from Mary to Jesus is easy, right? But when you're talking about in Alaska, it's different, right?
Yeah. So typically it'd be shamanism.
Okay.
Yeah. Very demonic, and so it's a different kind of belief system. But that's a really good question, and here's my answer. And if you want to see a detailed answer, read chapter 8 of my book, Mission Accomplished. And so I talk in detail about protocol, about honoring, about culture. And so basically, this is not just my belief, but it's something I practice. In every culture on the planet, every culture has something that should be revived. I really believe that. Every culture has something that should be revived. So some cultures it's obvious, in other cultures you might have to dig a little bit, but you'll find something that probably should be revived. And in every culture, there's something that should be killed and buried. And so we make a mistake when we take any culture, whether it's ours or somebody else's, and we somehow lift it up on a pedestal, and we say we want to embrace all culture so we don't offend people. And coming from a Christian perspective, there's absolutely no biblical stance on that. Jesus was not walking around on eggshells so he wouldn't offend the culture. In fact, you find through all of his practices, he utilized culture, but most of the time he did things that went against the current culture, and he was changing the culture of his day. So he didn't go out of his way to write letters and tell them how dumb their culture was. What he did was give them a different lifestyle to live, and gave them truths to look at, so that they could make those good choices. But he wasn't pro-culture. And often we go around and we want to put our stamp approval on a particular culture, whether it be indigenous people or native people or whoever. It doesn't really matter, whatever the culture might be. It's okay to be proud of your culture. I think that's okay. I think that's healthy. What's unhealthy is when you're proud of every aspect of your culture and you love your culture so much, you ignore the things that are deadly and dangerous in your culture. Good example, I go into an Athabascan village. I'm not going to honor their historical culture of shamanism, which is all about cursing their bloodline so that they can have powers from demonic beings. I think that's a part of their culture that should be killed and dead. What I am going to do is teach their young people how to make smoked salmon, because I was trained by native elders to do that. And that's part of their culture that's dying, that needs to be brought back. I am going to teach them how to set snares and catch animals, from squirrels to rabbits to bears. And we catch bears with snares. And I teach them how to do that and how to process it their native way, how to process the meat, how to dry the meat, how to do the fishing, how to do survival, how to all of those things with surviving. Those are cultural things that used to be taught in every generation in the native community that have been lost, because now you got the government sending you food by an airplane, and now you have Top Ramen showing up at the local store, and now you have all of these other things going on. So you lost some of your culture, whether it be dog mushing, living off the land, sharing with one another, honoring one another. So you got young people who steal from their relatives. What we're teaching them is how to honor their relatives, how to honor their uncle, how to honor their grandpa, not steal from grandpa, so we're bringing back the things that were healthy in their culture, but we're not supporting the things that were unhealthy in their culture.
Last night, so my wife and I had a conference in Honolulu last year. And so we hosted a conference with my cousin Rachel and at their church. And I think the second day of this conference, someone came up to my wife and I and said that the Lord told me to make this for the both of you. So he gave us, and I went live and I did it live and I posted some videos of it. But it's a traditional way of Hawaiians, how they would make poi. So poi is the taro root, and you basically mash it into like a paste where you would eat it with fish or beef. And I will say this, it's an old tradition and part of our culture that definitely needs to be kept alive. And it was amazing because my kids are Hawaiian. My wife is 49% Hawaiian. I don't know what I am, but I just know I got Hawaiian, Chinese, Filipino. But it was good, man. Like,
you come from the Mutt tribe?
Yeah. Well, see, in Hawaii, we don't say the word Asian. Like, if you say Asian, you're probably a new generation. But like, we say I'm Hawaiian, Chinese, Filipino. I know what I am, right?
Right.
I never say Asian because that's why it kind of boggles my mind when I have friends that say, "Oh, I'm white." No, like, what are you? Like, what is your history? What is your, So even with us, like culture, like my kids, man, it was a blessing, for them to make poi. Like, we could have stuck it in a food processor, but you take the pohaku with a stone and you pound it and you mash it and you bring it back and you keep pounding and pounding. And it was a long process for us because I haven't done that in 40 years. My wife probably 25 years, but my kids for the first time experienced that part of our culture. That's something we definitely going to keep. And you talk about top ramen, and I was thinking, bro, how many people, if the mats and containers don't come in next week, how are they going to feed themselves? Like, we started gardening. We my daughter makes homemade food. We started growing our own food. And like when I buy steak, like just the other week, I bought a whole bunch of steak, a big one, and I just cut it up. And I, individually, what do you call it? Vacuum seal, stick it in the freezer.
Yeah.
So if we need anything, we have it. But I know you're on a whole nother level, yeah, because yours is what, moose, elk. What is in your
We don't have any elk up here. We have some down at Kodiak Island. I've never gone down there to hunt them. They're apparently it's a really cool hunt. Steep mountains, hard to hunt. But up here, and we don't have deer up here either. It's too cold. We have that in South Alaska, which are called Sitka blacktail, little tiny things. Up here we have moose. We do have caribou in the mountains. Those are your two main meats as far as red meats. Black bear is common to be eaten by people in this area, not in mass. Like it you don't want that to be your main meat, but it's a nice backup. And then of course fish. Salmon is number one, and we get the best of salmon in Alaska. And then halibut. As far as your bottom fish go, halibut, they call it the steak of the sea, right? So it's pretty amazing here. And then there's other fish that we eat. And if you want to fish locally, we have trout just like you do in the lower 48, and most of those are plants. I don't know if there's any indigenous trout in this state. I don't know. We do have what would be indigenous would be grayling, which is like the dinosaur trout. We call it. It looks like a trout, but it's got this big, gorgeous, massive kind of dinosaur fin on top. And those fish they're pretty fascinating. You can actually Google grayling in Alaska, and I've seen pictures. Man, I don't know how true it is, but they say they've been frozen completely in ice, and then when the ice thaws out, the fish swims away. These fish can go dormant and go into a freeze state. Pretty crazy how they've adapted to the Arctic. But now here in the valley, I don't know how it is in other parts of Alaska, but in most places in Alaska, if it's a river or stream, you can catch and release, but you can't keep grayling because it's a a spawning area, to my knowledge. But in lakes, ponds, or any area that doesn't have flowing water, then you can catch them, and they're fun to catch. They'll put up a fight. And to me, they taste just like trout, honestly. But
Is the
they're
meat
good
red,
survival food.
and the meat is red, or is it white when you cook it?
No, it's a white meat. It looks
White
just
meat.
like trout when you literally looks identical when you open it up. It's shaped like a trout, looks like a trout. But if you Google it, grayling, they just have this spectacular fin on the back, and when you open it up, it looks like the sail to a boat. Like this fish was supposed to be a flying fish, and it just forgot to grow the wings on the side. I don't know. But it's got this top fin that's pretty spectacular.
I will say the trout or even the salmon here is so much better than when we get it in Hawaii. And Hawaii's got good food, but by the time we get the salmon, it's different. It's the same as
Right.
lobster, right? But
Yeah.
there's another fish called steelhead trout.
You have steelhead there. Yeah.
Yeah, but the meat is
Yeah.
pink. It looks like salmon, but it's actually a
I
trout.
think steelhead fishing is a popular thing there in Oregon. I remember that as a kid. That's pretty popular, Now up here in this area in the interior of Alaska and throughout Alaska actually, but we have a lot up here. The indigenous fish, there's several, but the main one would be northern pike. And you might catch a little tiny critter. I've actually caught pike on lures when the lure is bigger than the pike. So they have like little fish syndrome. They think they're big and bad, and they'll open up their mouth and they'll bite a lure bigger than their body. They think they can eat anything, but those things will grow up pretty big. The biggest we've caught is like 44 inches long, and it's a beast. And it's not uncommon to fillet a pike and find a duck or a muskrat. That's common. Or some like other animal inside of it, or a whole nother pike. So if you catch a 15-pound pike, pretty common to find another 5-pound, 6-pound fish inside of him, So they're just, those things are incredible predators, and they got teeth, a massive amount of sharp teeth, top and bottom, and they even have sharp, it looks like teeth and it feels like teeth in their gills. So if you go to pick them up by your gills, you better be wearing some pretty thick gloves. It'll just rip your hands and you'll start bleeding. So once they swallow something, once something goes in their mouth, it's impossible for that critter to get away. And once they bite on your lure, they don't want to let go. They want to swallow it. They want to swallow your line. They want to eat your fishing pole. And their hope is that you'll reel up close enough that they can swallow you. They're just beasts.
Now, do they look like the I think it's called the gar or alligator gar? Do they have a similar look?
Yeah, they look like an alligator.
Yeah,
I think they look similar to I don't know if they're a cousin to the wally?
the wally. Yeah,
That long, skinny looking fish. They'll get a really big stomach, but their mouth is like a third of their body. So when they get big, I call them gators. When they get really big, they look like you see their eyes pop up like an alligator out of the water, and you're like, dude, that thing's a beast.
So
definitely
when
don't want to be skinny dipping in those regions. I'm just saying.
well, they might bite something off, man.
I'm telling you, they are straight up. Those are a predator fish, and when people come out and go fishing with us all the time in the summer, I just tell them, get your Alaska license, make sure you're legal, and out at our camp you can catch them right off the shore. But they say, what kind of lure? I go, if you catch largemouth bass, if you have any bass lures, any bass lure will catch a pike, because they operate in the same way. It's a different fish, but they literally think the same way. They hide the same way. They'll hide behind a stump on a river and wait for something to come by, and then they go after it like a train, and they just shoot out of nowhere. So they'll hang out in these areas, in a hole under the bank of a river, and you cast in there and kapow. They're pretty lively.
So for you, we talk a lot about fishing and eating. Outside of your ministry, do you actually get time to do any of this stuff we're talking about? Like, do you have any personal rec time for you?
I have to make myself, like last summer, we're running camps for the summer, and I grabbed my boys. We'd we had just had took a bunch of kids back to the village, and we finished up camp, and we had this little gap of time before we grabbed kids for the next camp. And I looked at my boys and I said, guys, hop in the boat. We're just going to go fish, and we're not going to work today. And you just have to make it happen. You have to make it a priority, because there's always something to do in any ministry, but especially a remote camp ministry. There's something to fix, there's something to repair, there's something to prepare for the next group that's coming in. So I just made us go out, and we went upriver in this just quiet, beautiful scenery, and there's nothing out there. We saw a few critters, running around the shore, and when you're out there quiet, you'll see wolves and sometimes, and bears, and you're just out there fishing on this water, and you feel like you're a million miles from, anywhere, and we're catching fish and just having fun and getting the boat stuck and just fun stuff like that.
We took our kids out yesterday, and this is one of the blessings of being away from Hawaii, is that we get to do stuff. I mean, we've taken so many road trips that you don't get to do on an island. But yesterday, my wife is like, hey, let's just get out and let's go somewhere. And so we went to this lake, and to get to this place that we like, you have to kind of go off, I don't want to say off-roading, but you have to have a four-wheel drive to get into this spot. And so, we take it slow and we don't rush. And you don't need a four-wheel drive like right now, because the roads are pretty decent. But if it's, wet, and you're going to need a four-wheel drive. But when we got out there, there's nobody. Like, just super calm, and it's like just beautiful. And it's like, now the only thing my wife doesn't like is that there's these signs that say you are in bear country and cougar country. So she don't like that. So, but I told her it's fine. They're not going to mess with us in the daytime, I don't think. But I don't know.
Cougar's just a big cat.
Well, did you hear the story about the mountain lions and the wolves in America, the relationship? I don't know if this is true. You can probably verify. But one of the stories I heard is that the mountain lions, they're such good hunters compared to the wolves. But the wolves have been following these mountain lions and just basically take whatever food that they catch. So what this guy has been studying and observing is that these mountain lions are catching multiple animals, and they'll stash them. And rather than deal with the wolves and fight them over the food, he'll just catch and kill it, throw it on the side, let them get it, and he gets his own catch, and then he gets to eat in peace. And I thought, that's insane that we've got a wildlife like that. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if you've ever witnessed anything like that.
Well, mountain lions we don't have them up here, at least for right now. We don't. The Fish and Game told me a few years ago that they're starting to get reports of mountain lions coming up through British Columbia and getting closer into Alaska. So we'll see what happens. But we have, we do have a cat at our camp. We have a few cats there. The lynx.
Oh,
so these Alaskan lynx, and they're beautiful. But I've watched them in person, and we watch them on our game cams. I've got quite a few cameras set up, and I'll tell you what, they are very patient hunters. They'll sit there moving without blinking an eye for an hour, waiting for that squirrel to come down the tree, and then they'll pounce it. So a cat will hunt alone, but wolves, I've had to dispatch a wolf before in camp. When they're by themselves, they're way less dangerous, and they don't know how to hunt. So wolves are trained to hunt in packs, and without the pack, they're like gang members. You know what I mean? You ever seen a gang member by himself?
Yeah.
They're kind of wussy, but when they got their gang, they talk smack, and that's how wolves are. So a wolf will talk smack to you when he's got his buddies with you, but when he's by himself, he's very timid. He's usually going to run from you because he realizes he doesn't have any backup. Because how they do it is they circle. They use the whole, all of those tactics of one getting your attention while the others come in behind you. So wolves are strategic in the pack. They're great hunters as a pack. They're lousy hunters by themselves. They're almost useless. And the only time you ever see a wolf, there's two times I see wolves away from their pack. And one is if it's a scout. So they'll go out and scout for like a dead animal or a live animal that they can hunt, and then they'll holler for the pack to come in. But the other one is, and I see this more often, is a wounded wolf or a sick wolf or a lame wolf. Like we'll have a lame foot. It's really obvious. It's obvious to see even in their tracks, but when you see them in person, you'll see, and typically you can see their ribs. They look hungry. They're dangerous only because they're starving, but they were kicked out of the pack or they had to leave because wolves will eat their own. So when a wolf gets a sore ankle and can't keep up, the other wolves will turn on it and devour it. So that wolf will run for its life, and now he's a lone wolf and he doesn't know how to hunt, and they usually don't live long, because now he's hunting really small critters. But when he was with the pack, he's hunting big critters. And, it doesn't take a whole lot to kill one, even though timber wolves in Alaska are huge. I've dispatched one with a 22 caliber before. It took a few shots, but he done it like something like this would do it. That's a little high powered 22 cal. But, did you know that the rifle cartridge that has killed more cougars, or we call them mountain lions, in America and in Canada throughout history has been the 22 caliber?
I believe it.
Because it's a cat, and you take a 22 with a scope, shoot it in the head, and it's a big cat. I'm not saying they're not dangerous, but it's a cat. And usually if you have a dog, even a big old mean mountain lion will run up a tree to get away from that dog. That's why guys that hunt them, I had uncles that professionally hunted cougars for the federal government way back in the day. So they would get sent into these problem cougars, and they use dogs, run them into a tree, pull out a 22 and drop them. Yeah, my uncle said the hardest thing was sometimes the cat died in the tree and you had to go up after it because you didn't get paid until you recovered the animal.
So
yeah,
that's part of your job too, right? Like dispatching animals at the camp. So I know you told, how many bears did you guys take out last year?
We tried to calculate. I think it was last year. I sat down with one of my staff. We were trying to add up. Like, I wish we kept track of every bear that we individually killed, or even visitors that came in. When I say visitors, we'll have a native guy come in to drop off kids for a camp, and while he's there, he'll see a bear in camp. He'll shoot it, and then usually just hop in his boat and leave us with the mess. We're like, thanks a lot. And sometimes they'll take it because they want the meat or whatever. Depends on what tribe he's from, and so I don't really count all of those. Those are somebody else's kills. I keep track of what I do, and our staff keep track. But on average, I want to say we remove a half a dozen bears on average every summer, maybe a little more than that. I mean, one year I took 7 bears in one summer, and then there's been a couple of years I didn't kill a bear. Last year I killed 4 or 5. I think it was 5 bears. So currently I've killed 39 bears, and these are all problem bears. So these aren't. I've never been bear hunting, by the way. These are bears that come in and they cause. And in most cases, these bears have been scared off multiple times, and they finally came to the point where now they're dangerous and they're going to kill a young person. They're going to drag somebody into the woods and eat them. And for those of you, I know on the internet, right, and there's this whole feminist thing going around. Would you rather be in the woods with a man or a bear? I've watched a black bear, and the more their prey screams, the more they get excited and start eating it alive. And they don't kill you. They eat you alive, and they start at extremity. So they'll start with a lower leg. They'll start with a shoulder. They'll start with things that literally will not kill you. It's not a mortal wound. It's things that would take you days to die. And there's been stories of people like literally taking days to die as a bear's eating different parts. And they'll pass out from the pain, and then when the bear comes and munch on you again, they wake up so they can relive the pain. You want nothing to do with that. A black bear, you want to put it down, any bear for that matter. But black bears get excited when their food screams. If my food screamed, I'd probably throw it out. I don't get really excited.
Put it down. I'd be like, what the heck?
But they seem to be a little happy. They like their food screaming and making noise. So I tell people two things when you're in the woods, when they're out with us. I tell people, we train people that come in. We get people from the city. If you see a bear, number one, do not scream like a little girl. You sound just like their food. Okay, all of their food screams and has a high pitch. So you want to talk in a deep voice when you're around a bear. And number two, don't run from a bear. It's a predator. If you throw a stick in front of a dog that's just chilling, what's it do? It gets up and chases the stick. You throw a ball in front of a cat, it'll chase the ball, right? And so it's a predator. And if you run from it, it doesn't even have to be hungry. It goes, oh, it's running for me. I must chase it. I must achieve this. I must win this battle.
Here's the question:
never run from a bear.
And I don't know, because I've eaten bear and I actually enjoyed it the way it was prepared. I mean, it had a lot of seasonings, but I see these videos where the guys go, "Hey bear, hey," does that work?
Yeah, and make yourself as big as you can, because they don't know what you are. They know you're not a bear, but they don't know what you are, especially in our remote area. This is not like there in Oregon where you live. You could go to like one of the state or federal parks in Oregon, and you're going to find bears that for generations they've been raised around cars and people and dumpsters, and they have locks on dumpsters and all of that, and they have all these signs, don't feed the bears. And the bears are so used to humans, they kind of know what you are. They know what they can get away with. I'm in the wild. When a bear encounters me, typically I'm the first human that bear's ever seen, and so he's kind of curious. His eyes are staring at you, his ears are up, and he'll just keep walking at you because he doesn't know that you're dangerous. He thinks he's the king of the jungle. And so you have to scare him, because he has no reason to fear you. You have to give him a reason to fear you. So I started doing this years ago. If a bear won't back down, I'll start running at him. I'll chase him. And it's hilarious. It's worked every time. I carry a gun just in case it doesn't work, but it's worked every time. And when I start screaming and chasing a bear, his ears will go back, his hair stands up, and he'll stand up often on his hind legs and throw his body in the other direction and start running as fast as he can from me. And you know they're scared because you can follow little piles of poop. When a bear is scared, he will crap as he's running away from you. It's hilarious.
I didn't know that.
And so he will just empty himself. And you can you can follow where they're at, because they're just leaving little signs as they run. Every 20 yards, there'll be a pile. They're just dropping little nuggets of evidence of where they're going. Funny. And one time I was walking the trail, and I was in a remote part of our property. And for some reason, I left my gun in the camp office, and I just wasn't wearing it. I just went to go check on a building. I had to go do some measuring, and it was evening. And I thought, we haven't seen any bears in weeks. And I just walked over there like, everything's cool. And I get halfway up this trail, and around the corner is this huge boar. So that would be a male black bear. And he is not happy that I'm on. He thinks it's his trail now. And so he starts aggressively coming at me, and I realize I got a pocket knife on me. That's it. I don't have my pistol. And so I start doing the deep voice thing, putting my hands up. He stops for a minute, but that isn't good enough. So he just starts coming at me faster. He's closing in very quickly. And I realize this is going to be a wrestling match that I probably won't win. He's heavier than me. He's bigger than me. He's at least 5 times stronger than me. Well, not to mention, at my best, and these things are incredibly strong. And so I just kind of, like, my last movement was chase him. And so I started screaming and running at him. And I only had like 15 yards away because he was coming at me. And I just closed the gap, and I start running at him. And I get within like 10 yards, and I'm thinking, is this stupid? I'm running right into him. And all of a sudden he jumps, and his eyes get this big, and he lets out a grunt. And he starts running down the trail. And I chased him for probably 150 yards until I got tired. And then he's probably another 100 yards away from me. He stopped and looked at me, and we just looked at each other. And then you could see him kind of calculating, like, why am I running from this guy? So then I just I didn't run. I just slowly walked away till I was out of his view. And then I ran back to my office, made sure he couldn't see me. And I grabbed my gun. I come out, and come to find out he had followed me all the way back. And I got my gun just in time and had to dispatch him.
Well,
But chasing that boy is what saved my life. Chasing him saved my life at that moment. He eventually came to senses and like, I don't need to run from this guy. And he came back and followed my trail back to the office. But by then I was armed, and so I disarmed him pretty quickly.
well, you know what it was is he was like, I thought you brought your toenail clippers, that little knife you had. He was going to give him a manicure. He's like, hey, I came back from my manicure, you human. What the heck?
Take this guy, man.
You imagine the bear in heaven? He's like, I don't know, God. I went to your servant. I asked him to cut my toenails. He ended up shooting me, and here I am.
Yeah, they're nothing to mess around with, and it's pretty crazy. And some years we see a lot of it has to do with the weather and has to do with the food, and has to do with what we're doing at camp sometimes.
Well, I will say, I know we're having fun and stuff, but on a spiritual front, most definitely, those are things that will come up against you, right, in your camp and making.
Yeah, pretty common to see a bear right at, like, when you're praying with kids. It seems like they come right around prayer time. In my bedroom, I have a black bear hanging on my wall, and he's called Prayer Bear. It's the first bear I ever killed in Alaska, and he interrupted a prayer session we had. And so there's a long story behind that, but you can read it in my book, the whole chapter 3 of Mission Accomplished. During COVID, my publisher went out of business, which was in Beaverton, Oregon. And so this is actually the book. You can still find it on iBooks and on Amazon. So I don't know if the color looks all right there, but is that working?
Yep. Hold on,
Mission Accomplished. Just look up Ron Pratt. You can look it up. So you can download it if you're a person like me and you read, electronically. It's a little bit easier. I read on my iPad. Some of you use Kindle and whatnot. But right there, Mission Accomplished, the secrets of successful mission. So chapter 3 is actually about prayer, and I talk about Prayer Bear. So he's hanging in my wall, and I've got a couple of bears hanging in my bedroom that had significance to me. But they'll try to interrupt your life. I believe that it's a predator. I think the enemy likes to use predators in real life to affect people. And so I'm not real fond of predators.
Well, I will say that all the struggles you've been through and those animals I think they're a good representation of adversity. I think Patala was commenting, it's funny that you're chasing a bear. I will say, I'm not looking forward to seeing bears if I'm out there, but I'll be like, I'll feel good if you're there with me. So, in terms of all the books and the website, I'll make sure that I put it all in the descriptions, because I'm going to put it on Spotify and all that. Now you have the other book too, so you have 2 books out. If I'm not missing.
My latest published book would be, and you can still find this everywhere and on Amazon on paper as well as electronic, but Navigate Your Faith. I don't know if that's coming out okay there.
Yeah, it's perfect. I'll full screen.
All right, so it's a little bright here, but Navigate Your Faith. It's a Christian's field guide to not getting lost. And a pretty amazing story and a lot of practical teachings of life that are in here that I think would benefit any age. This is the book that I was really surprised at. 13-year-olds wrote me and said how significant it was to them, and then 73-year-olds wrote me and said, boy, this book was life-changing. And so it seems to hit all demographics and ages and genders, and because it's real practical stories that make sense. And it's a story about a young couple in church, and just how they navigate and hurdle the different things going on in their life. But without giving it away, you got to check it out and just read it. It's a really good read.
I'll make sure for everybody that's listening or watching that we'll put a link to it in our not course description, but our description in the audio and all that. But
Did you see that? I sent you a PDF copies of the books just for you.
Yeah.
And I sent you one that somebody asked me recently about it. And I just last week reread this book of mine. You can read it in an hour. And I wrote it back in our Periscope days because people were writing me a lot back then saying, hey, can you give me pointers on public speaking? Because for work, I have to go I have to do a seminar, or I have to do a presentation, I have to, whatever, different thing. And so I found myself literally so many people asking me if I could send them notes or material on public speaking. So I tried my best. You know how it is, Greg. You try your best to respond to you because your followers are amazing, right? And without them, you don't really have a platform. And so I'm doing my best to try to respond to each one of them. And it kind of hit me one day. I just need to write like a book on it. So I wrote a book called Public Speaking 101. And for those of you that are professional public speakers, all it would be is a reminder to you. You're like, oh yeah, I knew this. Yeah, I knew this. But for that person who hasn't had a course or a class and just needs some real basic, I made the book so incredibly simple. So my whole point of the book is that you read this before you go to an event, before you go speak for your work or you do your workshop, and it's going to give you confidence and it's going to give you an edge. And it's an easy read, but I think you'll find some nuggets in there that are amazing. I mean, I've literally had book clubs call me and said, can we use your book and feature it for our book club on public speaking? Even some of those, what's that club of where you join and they teach you on public speaking and you practice in front of each other? I forget the name of it, but they actually use this particular book because it's an easy one, just Public Speaking 101.
A lot of people don't know that, and actually I don't have my notes in front of me, but like I actually do take notes and I actually do make notes when I go live, but I usually have these color coded.
Right.
And I have different notes for depending where I'm at. And so I actually spend a lot of time writing things out. I don't always use it. And a lot of times I abandon it. Once the red light is on, or if I'm in front of people, like even if I'm like in a sermon scenario, I'll try to have my iPad with, technology nowadays. You have, what do you call that? It's called like a PowerPoint, right? And so I can swipe my slides on my iPad and it goes up on screen. Depending on the church or whatever. I used to use my Moleskine journal, and I used to get lost when I'm in the middle of speaking. So I'm like, just abandon. As long as I know my bullet points, I'm good. Like, what is your preferred source of notes or things to keep you on point whether it's preaching or speaking?
Yeah, and I talk a lot about that in the book. But really, I'm a bullet statement person. So not only do I use bullet statements when I speak, whether it's a 30-minute workshop or whether it's a 2-hour presentation or whether it's preaching or teaching, I use bullet statements as memory points in there. But in my notes, if you were to look at my notes, they may or may not make sense to you because I don't have a lot of detail. All I have is little reminders. Like I'll put a little reminder, and I use color coding. It really helps me. And the older I get, it seems to help me even more when I'm glancing at my notes. So like for me, green are notes that I'm not going to speak out loud. They're just reminders for me. And I'll say like, when I'm giving like an illustration, I'll call it story. So I'll put story about such and such. And so I already know the story. It's in my head. It's just reminding me to tell that story. Or I'll say this illustration, the painting illustration. And so I know what that means, the painting illustration. So I put little notes. If it's a scripture, I'll write it out so I don't mess it up, unless it's something I know that everybody knows. And I know if it's a real common scripture, I go ahead and put that in my notes. But I'm not rigid to my notes. And that's where people make a mistake. They try to get in too much and they try to cram it all in there. And so I look at the time frame, but I also watch the audience. And so if the audience is having trouble retaining, I cut things out and I'll reiterate something so that it sinks in deeper. And I don't try to give them, like, I've literally had some teachings that are like 7 main points. And by the time I get into my third, I can realize, oh, yeah, we're not going to have time for this. So instead of cutting them out, I'm going to reduce my points. I'm going to pull out some illustrations. I'm going to pull out another one of those stories, and I'm going to make it as simplify. And I'll change it on the fly. And especially when I'm doing school campuses. And now it's a whole nother dynamic. Now I'm speaking to, in the Philippines, I'm doing so many schools and universities, and most of the time they understand my English, which is helpful. Even though they don't all speak good English, they're still learning it. It's their second language in that country. But so because of that, I talk a little slower, and I do a lot of, I noticed I speak in a lot of thesaurus, meaning I'm like, I'll say a word, and I'm not sure if I don't get a response from the crowd when I use that word, I give a similar word that means the same thing. And then when I get a response from them, I'm like, okay, they're on the same page. So I'm always watching the audience and making sure they're tracking with me. With young people, you got to do that.
Yeah.
And I realize some cultures, they're tracking, but their face doesn't say it. Like when I'm speaking to Eskimo people, it looks like they're all just staring into space. And the truth is they're listening to every word you say, but it's just not in their culture to smile and give you a thumbs up. They're just staring at you kind of stoic. And so you just have to trust that, okay, this is working. The other thing I've learned is pause. See, we don't like to pause in our culture. Yeah. And, I used to work in radio years ago. I wasn't a radio personality, but I wrote commercials and I sold radio. And one of the things you did was, if you have anything more than a second in a pause, you're going to get chewed out, right? So when you're creating a commercial, we don't like a pause. We don't like dead time. But when you're speaking to some cultures, the pause is very necessary, because they just had a lot of stuff thrown at them they need to retain. So it's okay to pause, and I just stare out at the audience, and I'll say to them, I'm going to give you a moment to let that sink in. And I'll give them a moment, because they want to look down, write a note, and then I'll jump back into it. Just slow down sometimes, and before you throw another round in the rifle and pull the trigger, just slow down and let them process what they just heard.
You know what's powerful, what you just shared? So on my ads, which when I upload to Spotify, you'll hear them, I eliminate every space, right? So when you do these ads, you I forget what the term, I don't know, I'm not technical, but I just know I have a software where I close all the gaps. So it sounds like I'm a car salesman, or not, like an auctioneer.
Yeah.
But it squeezes my whole ad from 2 minutes to a minute, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But I agree with you, when we're speaking publicly, taking that pause, because I talk, like, I have a short tongue, I have crooked teeth, I have a couple of missing teeth. So when I speak, sometimes I have a lisp, and so I have to make sure I am very deliberate on enunciation and taking a break to make sure that they actually got it. Because if they didn't get it, they're just going to sit there and nod their head, and they didn't really get it. So
you know what helped me with speaking was years ago, before there was a Siri, before we had any of those built-in apps, you could order. I had a PC way back in the day, and you could order a program, and I don't remember. It was called something Naturally Speaking. It was this program that I ordered in the mail, and I loaded it on a CD, onto my computer, and you could practice, use the microphone and practice. It was for like writers who are writing lots of material, or they're doing dictation, and you spend the first 2 weeks trying to train it to recognize you, and this program literally thought I was an idiot. Like, it didn't understand any of my English. I felt like some bumpkin from, the backwoods of Louisiana, and because it showed me that I don't speak clearly at all, and I still recognize it. But that app or that program, it wasn't an app, that program actually helped me slow down and speak clearly so that I wouldn't talk sloppy. And that really helped me make a difference. And then now we have Siri, we have all of these different programs that, you'll see it. If we mess up on a word, it doesn't know what you're saying. And so it types something silly and you have to check it before you hit send, or else it looks pretty silly. Right. And so I think those actually help us speak into Siri. If you want to practice, that's a good way to practice, is just open up whatever device you have, turn on the audio, the voice activation, open up Pages or whatever, document or Word, and just start talking away. And it'll really change how you speak, because you'll recognize whenever I say this particular series of words, it can't recognize what I'm saying. So obviously I need to change how I say it.
Mm-hmm. You know what helped me a lot was, I used to sell cars back in the day, and the company I worked for was Honda. And so I think like every week, like on Thursdays, we would they would say, okay, everybody out in the parking lot, we're going to record commercials. So they had this whole high production company come out and we record commercials. And I remember sitting through, I would do a walkthrough and a demo. I would sell a car on camera. And I remember having to stop the camera, and the guy was like, okay, you got to do it again. And I remember how much I hated it, because I'm not good at pre-recorded. But then when I watched the commercial when it came out the next week, oh, I loved it. It was like, and since, I was a kid, I've always been kind of like playing music, or I think when I was 7 or 8, I was on stage playing music in front of my school. But when I did the commercials for Honda, it was the funniest thing to me to see myself on TV, but I knew what it took to get there, because all the takes I had to do just to get that 30 seconds, it was such a chore for me, but such a great learning experience, learning to speak in front of a camera. And to this day, I still hate doing that kind of, I love live. Like, I need the pressure to not perform. I need the pressure to flow. If I don't have the pressure, and whenever you're preaching, you're not recording it, it's live. I mean, I'm sure it is recorded, but in the sense of once that you got to go, you can't stop, So,
hey, Greg, let's take a minute. Are there any comments that we need to address? Or I see Tala's been, I'm just now kind of looking over there. Sorry, Tala.
Yeah, we got City Flyer on. I'll put them up on screen on YouTube.
So you think it's funny that I chase bears? I'm telling you, I'm 62. I can still do it. I just can't run very far. So I'm making a short run now. A very short run.
So Tala was talking about 3 to 5 seconds. I'm guessing at most is best.
Yeah. Speaking of the bears, she's mentioning grizzlies. We have grizzlies on our property. I could, actually, I think probably on my Instagram and also on my TikTok, you can click and find a few pictures or video clips of grizzlies on our property. We have some big grizzlies. There's one particular family that's there, but I've never chased a grizzly. And I don't know if I would. They're a different breed. They're afraid of nothing. It's pretty common to see a grizzly chasing a black bear. That's one of their food sources. They'll attack even if a black bear is bigger than them, a young grizzly will take and beat the tar out of a big grown black bear. And so they are just such a tough animal. That brings you back to, you better be armed. You better be ready. And so I'm prepared for that, although it's really not been an issue. Grizzlies seem to choose their fights wisely, and so when they hear you, they kind of stay out of the way. But I have yet to encounter one up close, only from a distance.
What kind of firearm would you need to dispatch one if you had to?
I carry a .44 Magnum in the woods. It's a Smith & Wesson revolver, 6.5-inch barrel, and I'm shooting 320 grain solid lead. They actually call them bone breakers. It's a grizzly round made here in Alaska. So the idea is that it will not mushroom. It will not change its shape. It'll go through the bone that predator and turn their bone into shrapnel. That's what you want to do. And for bears, you want to aim for the shoulder. Unlike what some people say, you don't aim for the heart or the lungs. You want to put it down quickly, and so you want to take out think of it like a boxer. So its strength is in its front paws. It doesn't attack you with its rear paws. It's only going to attack you with its front paws. And so if you can take out the shoulders, you have a really good chance of getting off a kill shot. And you also have a really good chance of keeping it from getting any closer to you. So I haven't had to stop one yet. And like I said, most of the time they've kept their distance. But I do the same thing with black bears. That gives me a little practice. I'm shooting the same way that I would a grizzly. I'm shooting black bears.
Are you tired of being the odd man out at family reunions or those family gatherings over the holidays because you're the one taking a photo of the family and your head is in the entire frame? Well, go to archon.com, get yourself a very reliable, sturdy, robust tripod, which are literally bendable and moldable to almost any situation. Go to archon.com, get yourself a tripod. Now, they also have devices and mounting solutions for those of you that have tablets, cell phones, whether you are a professional photographer and you have a DSLR camera, they have that too. Now, if you are a professional driver, maybe you're a gig driver, maybe you are one of those weekend warriors that earns a little bit of extra money for your family on the weekends, you do Lyft, Uber, DoorDash, you're one of those heroes, go to archon.com. They have everything you would need. And also, if you are an airline pilot, that's right, if you are an airline pilot, they actually have mounts for you too. So when you do those barrel roll flips as a United Airlines pilot, don't worry, your passengers may be freaking out, but as long as your tablet is safe, go to archon.com. Be sure to put in Hawaii at promo code and you'll get 20% off your entire order. Archon.com, keeping your devices within reach. So I was just putting up your website, and then now this is still available, right? T-shirts and all that stuff.
So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We're getting ready to do a rebuild, but yeah, that's still available.
Now, do you still have that coat?
The jacket?
The jacket, yeah.
Yeah, it's just a Carhartt.
Oh, okay.
And, I have, and of course the hood is like all Carhartts. You can snap it in and snap it off. And so when I'm not wearing that fox hat, in this picture right here, I'm wearing a fox hat. That's literally made from fox here in Alaska. It's got the long tail in the back and everything, if you saw the back of it. When I'm not wearing that, I just wear my Carhartt and I snap in the hood. I took the hood and I sent it to a Native woman years ago. And I had been given a white wolf ruff, which is a hide of a wolf. And so I had her take my wolf hide and put it into the ruff of my Carhartt hood. So my hoodie is a white wolf. So when I'm not wearing the fox hat, I'm wearing a wolf hat, which is pretty cool.
So the rebranding, what is it going to look like? Are you still going to have your merchandise and all that available?
Yeah, I think so. I'm just changing the website up a little bit, and whatever's there is still available, but I'll be changing things up and adding a few things. So I haven't looked at it in a while. I'll be working on that over this summer, getting things moved around. But you know how it is with merch and whatnot. When you're active doing a lot of live stream, it's necessary to have all of that available. And I've been inactive or so sporadic for so long that there hasn't been a demand for it. So there hasn't been a priority put on my end to do that. So I think if I got back into the game, it would make a difference.
You know what's interesting for me is that I did a poll on Twitter recently, and I asked them, what is your most valued tool, basically, on Twitter? What do you prefer to use? Is it live streaming? Is it audio, video content where you just post a picture? Or is it audio space, which they call it spaces? It's kind of like a talking audio.
Yeah.
Or is it long form written content? And the two top percentages were long form written content and audio spaces. I don't believe that's true for the masses. I believe that's true for people that voted. But what we're doing now, this what they call long form content, like podcasting, it's huge. It's crazy huge, and in terms of we're we're so we're so plastered in our culture with short form. Like, if I don't get your attention in 20 seconds, like, I see you later. Where that's the culture.
Yeah.
But what we're doing now, there's a huge market for this because obviously Joe Rogan, all the top people that we listen to, but there's a huge market for people. They just want to. It's almost like we're in the same living room, or I'm in your house and we're about to have dinner. We're just talking, and people
Right.
are they.
Right.
Back when we were first live streaming, it was like, okay, I gotta show you the latest, craziest event that ever happened on planet Earth, and if you don't join me live, you're gonna miss it. And
Yeah.
that there is a market for that, but I do believe even what we're doing, where people
Yeah.
can just be in our living room and just hang out, and of course we got something we
Right.
can deliver too. But so for you, what's next for you, like social media wise, or even what's coming up for you that's imminent?
You're kind of my go-to guy to say, hey, what platforms are out? You seem to stay on top of it. I'm a little disconnected, but and I don't want to harp on this whole Periscope thing because it wasn't perfect. All of us struggled with, and in fact, if it wasn't for several live streamers on there, Periscope would have never made any improvements at all. But we were harping on them and jumping in and that kind of thing. But unfortunately, they are the standard. That app was the standard for live streaming, and not just live streaming. Let me take that back. Interactive live streaming.
Mm-hmm.
So I believe there's a huge difference between live streaming, which is that TV model, and you're just entertaining somebody, versus interactive. So they were moving more and more and getting better at the interactive before things collapsed. I think if something, it doesn't have to be a revival of that particular app, but if somebody created something that did the most of that had that kind of focus, and you and I both, and a lot of the people that are watching right now probably could say they tried a few things, like I did the HAPS thing until it collapsed, and we did, right?
Yeah.
And I did really well on HAPS. And so we quickly built up an audience, and again, we were trying to focus on that interactive live stream, whether I was out in the snow or in the woods or watching a sunset or sitting here in front of my computer talking about a subject like this. It had to be interactive. And the fact that you could bring somebody on with multiple screens and have communication, that was huge. That was massive. And so you put so much time into an app, and then you go, okay, how does it benefit me? Because if it doesn't benefit you at the end of the day, it's like, why am I doing this? I'm not stuck in a wheelchair and I have nothing else to do but that talk into another app, another platform, and just put time into it. I got a really busy life, and it's, what's crazy is at 62 my life has become busier than it ever has, and it's not just busy doing stuff randomly. Like, I'm chasing some dreams, and I'm actively involved in some things that are making a difference in lives, whether it's here in Alaska or whether it's in Asia. So so with all of that being said, if I was going to dump some time or energy into another platform, it needs to have some of those elements, I think, and I haven't really found that with Twitter/X, and so I, there maybe there's something being developed that you guys know about that I don't know, or something being revived.
I don't even know, honestly. And I actually posted a comment about it where, if I'm going to be investing time, and there's a reason why, and I've been trying to recruit you to do more in terms of the social media side of it, and not because we want to, show people what we're eating for breakfast, but I think what you do is so powerful. Just the fact of what you're doing in Alaska and doing in Asia as well, and in the Philippines, man, people would love to see that. But more importantly, I think people would love to sow into that, right? And what an amazing, like, I think we were praying earlier, like, if you remember, we were praying, I said, God, thank you for this ability to share our life and
Yeah.
to have a
Yeah.
platform to do it. And yes, of course, we're asking for people to pay attention and watch, but there's a much
Yeah.
bigger thing to that. And I don't know what Twitter is going to do. 'Cause in my opinion, they're really making a lot of ill-advised changes. And did you meet Kayvon Big Pour when you went to the headquarters?
No, I don't remember who all I met. That was a full day of craziness that I could probably write a little book just on that one experience.
So for people that don't know, Papa Bear was doing so well in live streaming that he was invited to Twitter headquarters. It was kind of a media event, I'm guessing, as well, right? Like a whole.
Well, no, there was no event. I was the only live streamer there that day.
What the heck?
It was like literally what I found out is there were several employees, and most of them were working with Periscope on that department, which was on one floor. And they were fans of mine, which is crazy because all of my fans that worked there, by no surprise, were extremely liberal and extremely on the other side of the fence of everything I believe and hold dear to me. But PapaBear Alaska was this person. They kind of put all of the faith-based issues that they would, just those are issues. He's got these faith issues. And so let's just put that aside because we like the persona of who he is. Let's invite him in. And so they cleared me through. You had to get cleared through security before you even get in, before you get the email saying you're invited. And then there's security process going in the building. But yeah, that was a pretty crazy day. Yeah.
I think where we are now, I don't know if they'll bring back the magic of that part of the live streaming. I will say, if you haven't watched the Kayvon Big Pour podcast that he did, I forget the name of the guy. I posted it up, but he shared a little bit about. So for those that don't know, live streaming, as it is today, everybody pays homage to Periscope, which was owned by Twitter. And Kayvon brought up something very important. He said that they could not figure out, or they didn't figure out in time, how to maximize their retention. And in that area, I do agree with him in that respect of the retention rates. But he says every time they launch a new product or a new version of Periscope, that they would have surges of just massive, viewership. And then when they launch a new country, they would have a massive influx of viewership. But the problem is people weren't staying in long enough to justify, I'm going to say cost, but that's what I'm thinking, like the cost to run that amount of data through the company, because it is expensive to host a video. Like, it's not free to have millions, if not billions of hours of video. So
right now, I don't know if TikTok's at all any comparison, but at least they have multi-screens and other people can join you with video and audio on the screen, and so you can have discussions like there. So I think if I put any time into recently, it's probably more TikTok. The reason I got a TikTok, though, wasn't really with that intent. It's because most of my relatives in the Philippines and the people I've met over there, they all have TikTok and they have Facebook. So those are the two apps they use in the Philippines predominantly. So, and I've done live there a few times. Actually, I've only gone live there from the Philippines just because, and that was kind of cool. But, I might try that some more and see how that goes and see how the multi-people works on the app. But I do like the idea that it can be done from my phone, so I can be mobile.
I would definitely encourage you to do, I'll walk you through it maybe when we end. I'll show you some of the things. Like right now, I'm live on Facebook. So what's up, Facebook family? Twitch, of course, Twitter, X, Rumble, which is, you would like Rumble. Rumble is a very free speech platform.
All right. I have Rumble. I didn't know you can go live there.
Yeah,
Can you?
you can go live from Rumble, and then Kick is basically a Twitch. I'm not gonna say clone, but they look very much so like Twitch, without the politics of Twitch in a sense of revenue. Then Instagram Live, which I don't have a lot of traction on Instagram Live, but the reason why I do this, and I think I talked about it before, is not so the majority of my Facebook family will never go on to Twitter, right? They're like, they always say the same thing. I don't understand how Twitter works. Right. I don't understand this.
Right.
And we're also live on YouTube. So, and same thing with YouTube. YouTube has such an amazing polished video process. Like it's just, and the commenting is simple. So I guess I look at it as a footprint, right? So if we've got a message or we've got something that God gave us to deliver, I want to make sure my footprint is as big as possible. Now I may not invest a lot in the social aspect of those platforms. I will invest my social time depending on which one's getting me the most traction. But I think it's fair to give our people that are never, like Facebook will never jump on Twitter. It's extremely rare that I'll see any of my Facebook family on Twitter. So,
you're getting different circles of people. Yeah, because everybody has preferences.
And I think it's wise. I think now the trick is, now I'm blessed because I use StreamYard, which is basically a software. It just automatically sends it all. The other thing, when we're done, I'm going to edit my audio, and once I put it onto Spotify, it automatically gets sent out to whoever has that. So I think I'm on 5 different podcast channels, and I don't even know what they are. I remember.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So that's just another avenue, and and so and all that, we can make clickable links. So all the books and things that you want to promote, I'll get a list from you. I'll put it in all my podcast links. People can just tap on it while they're listening to you, and they can buy a book or they can buy a T-shirt while they're listening to us talk. It's crazy.
Well, hey, here's your challenge, Greg. When you get a chance, read the Public Speaking 101 and tell me what you think about it. All right. And it's an ebook, and people can download it, but just tell me what you think about it. It's a quick read. You'll read it pretty quickly.
Well, I will read it, take notes, and I'll offer an honest feedback to it.
All right. Cool.
I'll gladly take, like, I've been watching videos on voiceover classes, and I've been learning. You do these. I didn't do it today. Normally, I do it before we go live. I'll do these audible, like elephant, like eloquent. Oh, these tongue twisters. So yeah, I'm game.
I see Tella saying you need 1,000 followers to go live on TikTok. I think they actually dropped it to 800 because I went live at a little over 800. And that was just, I think this year they made that change. And it's really interesting because in Europe, you still have to have 1,000. And then there's countries where like Philippines, you only need 200 and you can go live. And so it depends on the country. Everybody's treated differently. Kind of interesting. But I think it's 800 right now, Tala, because I went live at just a few over 800. I heard from other people that it had moved 800, and I go, well, I have 800. I'm going to give it a try, and it went live, no problem. So it's 800 right now.
I've been at 500 for 2 years. So
I gave while I was in the Philippines just a few months ago, I opened up a TikTok for my wife, and her handle everywhere is Happy Asian Wife.
Yeah.
And she got over 1,000. And I'm like, what? I've been on this thing for like a year. How did you get over 1,000 already? She goes, I just did what you told me to do. And I'm like, oh my goodness.
Maybe you got to change yours to Happy Alaska Man or something. Or
I don't know. And she is better looking than me. That has something to do with it. But anyway, so you guys can find her Happy Asian Wife on all the platforms. So that's pretty cool. Hey, for those that don't know, what I do is we call ourselves TGM, This Generation Ministries, and you can find our website at just literally tgmalaska.com. But we do suicide prevention. So we do that. We provide programs, winter camps, summer camps, school assemblies, and we do that both in Alaska and in in Asia, specifically the center of the Philippines. And something, I don't know if I told you this, Greg, but this year we actually got, our ministry was incorporated with the country of the Philippines. So we now have our incorporation papers. So we're officially This Generation Ministries Philippines. And so we're doing it at both ends, and we're going back and forth, which means I'm doing a lot of international flying, which is wearing me out. but the cool thing is we're seeing amazing results, and we're providing something in these communities that other people aren't providing. So that's what we do. If you're curious what we do, and you can find us on tgmalaska.com. So that's what we do. The other thing we do is we're a missions organization. So we train people in missions, and we host teams. So every year, winter and summer. In the summer, we mostly host work teams and some ministry teams, which we call support staff. So these are staff support teams that come in and help us with a particular camp, and they work alongside my team and help them, make that camp effective. And so they work with them in running the camp. And we also have work teams. These are construction teams that come from organizations, nonprofits, men's groups, teenage groups, schools, universities, and churches as well. We usually every year take on university teams that are coming, and they work with us, and they actually get accreditation with their school working with us because we're a legitimate, we kind of fall under foreign missions, even though we're in Alaska, but you got to fly over the ocean to come get to us. And so we help people get that experience, get into the village, or help us with our camp. And so we're always looking for hosting work teams, as well as ministry teams. If you're ever interested in that, just send me an email. And I think PapaBear Alaska
at gmail.com.
At gmail.com is the quickest way. Just PapaBear Alaska at gmail.com is a great way. You can also go to our website, though. That's an even faster way, because there's a place on there where you say, hey, I'm interested in bringing a team, whether that's a team of 1 or a team of 101. You click on it and submit that, and it immediately sends me a private email saying, hey, this individual is interested in coming and helping. And so there's a place for a lot of people. We're looking for a variety of people, not just like this summer we'll have teams come in. It's not just construction, but I need people who can cook in a remote kitchen, and people who can split firewood, and people who can, do a variety of things. So we get people from all walks of life in different faith backgrounds. And so it's pretty cool to meet the people that we meet every year. We've literally hosted hundreds of teams. So this is something we do.
What is the ideal size of your team that you would like to have this summer?
In the summer, an ideal team is somebody who can, depending on like local commercial airplanes are typically 7 passengers and gear. So if you have 7 passengers, that's a good number. If you have 14 people, now you're taking 2 airplanes. Our bigger teams usually have to charter an airplane, and we have a few companies that we send them the information and then let them negotiate. And so when I say charter a plane, once you fly your flight into Fairbanks, Alaska, then there's a small, we call it a hopper. There you got a small plane, and it's anywhere from a 7 to a 9-seater, depending on the company, and it's going to fly to a local village that is close to our camp. So it might be 60 river miles away, it might be 30 river miles away, and then we coordinate with that team, and we're there waiting for them with boats, and we pick that team up, and then they travel the Yukon River. And if they survive that, we get them into camp and put them to work.
So how many, do you have like a number total for as far as volunteers that would make it comfortable for you or not worry?
It depends on, like, during the camp, we have a little more of a filter for people who work with our kids. Obviously, in this day and age, in any faith-based ministry, even any non-faith-based organization, when you're working with kids, you got to have background checks. And so anybody that's working with kids, we have to jump through those hoops as well. And so I'm a little more particular When we're doing construction, though, I don't have any background checks because you're working with wood and buildings. There's less issues there, and so we get way more people who come out who say, "Man, I'm not really comfortable talking or speaking, but I can swing a hammer, or I can work a shovel, or I can help mow the airstrip," you know. And oh, by the way, we got this cool mower for our airstrip last year. We got this brand new Husqvarna, one of those riding lawnmowers, donated. Oh, dude, it used to be so hard to cut that thing. Now it's a breeze. It's awesome.
Is that the one they call the 0 degree? What?
That's a zero turn.
Zero turn.
Which is kind of overkill for us because you're just trying to do this straight lines on a runway, and it's like, 75 yards wide, but it's 1,000 feet long, and so a lot of grass to mow. You got to keep that mowed, or the pilots don't feel safe. So we keep that thing looking beautiful for our pilots.
So I would say this to anybody that needs to or that wants to connect. That's the email put up on the screen, papabearalaska@gmail.com. Also the website, I think that's right, tgmalaska.com. And then also his personal, if you guys want to just connect. And if anybody wants to just sow into his ministry and just be a blessing, that's how you would reach out to him, Papa Bear Alaska. Or the best probably way for immediate
TG Alaska.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. TG Alaska. Okay.
Yeah, that's where you would do any giving. And there's lots of ways to give. You can actually click on there and give towards what we're doing in Alaska, or specifically what we're doing in the Philippines. And anyway, you'll see there's a drop-down menu.
Well, we're going to land the plane. Anything on your heart before we close this out?
Man, I don't know. We covered all kinds of subjects, didn't we?
Yeah. I kind of wanted to talk about guns, but I think we kind of did in a light way. Then that's a perfect, actually.
That's all right. I got plenty of guns behind me, and on over here that's actually a pellet rifle.
Wow.
And that keeps the squirrels from burrowing into my log home. So they're the critters that we have to protect our sons. Out at camp, it's bears. Here, it's squirrels are the issue. And then above my other shoulder here, that's a 5.7. So 20 round mag. Those things are pretty beastly. So, it's part of Alaska culture, especially if you're going to get away from city limits. You're going to have some sort of firearm. It's foolish to go in the woods and not be armed, literally foolish. So there's many of anti-gunner that has been eaten alive in Alaska. And so it's just smart to protect those around you as well as yourself. It's a good idea.
You said something earlier about the bears and how if someone else shoots the bear, that's theirs, that's their kill. But for sure, the ones that you've dispatched, you remember. And it took me back to, so I got my pistol safety course training in Honolulu, and one of the things I remember was because we had to discuss and learn basic laws in terms of if you discharge your firearm. One of the things I remember, he said, you are responsible for every bullet that leaves your gun. Yeah. And I'm like, that's so powerful when you think about it. I mean, that's a whole sermon, of course, but the fact that you can't just unload an entire clip and not have some responsibility for every bullet, because if someone's on the other end of the wall, or then you know what I mean, and so obviously that preaches well. But I will say that even here in Oregon, so you said 20 rounds, is that what you said for that 5.7?
Yeah.
So I don't know if they passed it or they're going to pass it, but here in Oregon they're trying to pass the 10, where you can't have more than 10. And I'm like, that's crazy.
So ridiculous. It's so crazy.
Like, you better be a good shot and hope that you can do it in 10. Because if not,
yeah.
But it's funny we talk about.
That's a whole nother podcast.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's there's a whole lot of ignorance going on there, but I'll tell you who loves those laws are criminals.
Yeah.
They're like, oh yeah, I'm going to do a better job. Guaranteed, I'll have more ammo than the good guy.
Yeah.
So it only affects the law-abiding citizen. Those laws don't affect the bad guy. Never does. But Well, I hope people found this interesting.
I tell you what they will find interesting is the fact that Papa Bear chases bears, and that's why he got his name.
That's hilarious. Yeah.
Well, we're going to land the plane. Just as a reminder, family, if you want to connect with him, it's papabearalaska@gmail.com. That's probably the quickest way to get a hold of him. Or on socials. He's on every social. It's all the same, Papa Bear Alaska. And then I'll make everything available in Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all of the links. If you want to buy his books, you want to sow into his ministry, I'll put that in there as well. And closing remarks, Papa Bear, and then I'll take over after that.
Closing remarks. Life is crazy. I don't care where you live, what culture you're a part of. Everywhere I go, I hear crazy stories. And I was just talking to a young man this morning who just last week lost his father at only 52 years old. Like just sitting in the living room, and they didn't, had a past heart issue, but they said, the doctor had cleared him, and literally while watching TV fell over, heart attack, died instantly. And that's the reality. Death is a reality of life. And we're all going to encounter situations in our life that are tough. Maybe it's not death. Maybe it's other challenges. And it's in those moments where you really go, okay, is there a God? It's in those moments where you have an opportunity to test him. And I know the word says not to test the Lord, but there's some things we can test. How many people have you heard that just said they were at the end of their rope and they cried out, God, are you real? And I've had so many situations that I could reference to. Good example, I teach people about when you get a random thought of somebody, don't just think it's a random thought. Do something about it. There's a reason they came to your mind. And I remember years ago, I woke up in the middle of the night and just had this random thought of this guy I hadn't talked to in at least a couple of years. He was sort of an outside friend, not really a close friend, but somebody I knew. And so I just, like 3 a.m, texted him, hey, don't know why I'm thinking about you, but it's the middle of the night, got you on my heart, hope you're doing well. And I just encouraged him, sent the text, went back to sleep. Next day, the phone rings, and he's crying on the phone and says, you have no idea. I prayed last night. I was just talking out loud to God and saying, nobody cares. And tomorrow I'm going to end my life. And he woke up to a text of somebody that cares, and he chose not to end his life. And so maybe you're that person who's like, God, I'm at the end of my rope. And, faith is a crazy thing. It's the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen, and I would say not yet seen. We can't see it. We can't always see God, but I'm telling you, you can feel him, you can hear him. When you call out to him and he's there, he's real. And it's in those moments where you test your faith. And when you test his faith and you see him come through, and then you do it again, then you become a person like us who we live by faith. We live knowing that God will come through. He can come through. Not always in our timing, but he always comes through. And then you start finding out there's something bigger to this life. Death is inevitable, but so is eternity. And so whatever you're going through, I just ask that you look to the Lord. He's the difference that all of us are looking for.
Man, amen and amen. We make sure we launched it right, and we make sure we land it right. For those of you that are not following, make sure you follow Papa Bear Alaska. Before we started, we prayed. Papa Bear is one of the few guests where I can start off a podcast in prayer before we start. And my passion was to make sure that everything we talked about, whether it was just living room conversation or ministry conversation, that God gets all the glory and that Jesus is Lord in everything we talk about. A lot of people talk about God, but not a lot of people talk about Jesus. So Jesus is the reason why we do this. And closing it out with this, if anybody is in a dark place, maybe you're going through something that's a struggle, I agree with Papa Bear, man. You text somebody, tell them you love them. But if you're in a place where you just don't know where to turn, my DMs are open on all socials. You're welcome to send me. And I'm sure Papa Bear will be more than willing to take those as well. And we'll pray with you. We're not going to pray for you. We're going to pray with you because you're going to be praying with us. And that's not a really good joke, but in all honesty, we want to pray with you. And to close it out, John 10:10 talks about the enemy has no desire for you to be successful in anything, but rather he steal, kill, and take everything from you. But we know that Jesus came to bring us life, but to also have it in abundance. And so that's here and now. And so I'm glad to have you, Papa Bear. And we're going to end it, but we'll talk to you in the back end, and we'll just say our final goodbyes.
Yeah, that'd be good. Hey, next time, maybe we'll talk about value. I got some cool illustrations that I do in the schools.
Let's do it.
We'll talk about value.
Family, we love you. Subject. Thank you for your time. Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Rumble, Kick, Instagram Lives. Good to have you back in the folds. Spotify, Apple Podcasts. We love you too, even though you're on slight delay. On behalf of my family, Ron's family, we appreciate you guys. We love you guys. Until our next time, as I always say, love you guys. God bless you guys. Ahui ho, aloha, and mahalo. Cheers.
It's a brand new day. Hey.